What's up, everybody? Today on Universal Theory, we're going to be talking about quantum field theory. We're going to be talking about mentalism as it applies to quantum field theory, and we're going to be talking about cause and effect. We're just going to give you this new type of content, bite-sized content. We've seen that some people have been watching it for the whole video, but some people are only sticking around for 10 minutes. So we want to make sure everybody can get all the information, and it's jam-packed into this 10-minute session. So we're going to start giving you content every other day so you can get more of us, but it's just going to be spread throughout the week, and we'll still do the long-form interviews and the long-form content. Thank you for everybody who has been down in the comment section and for everybody who's been liking our videos, sharing them. It's greatly appreciated. We really, really do appreciate that. And for the individuals who are questioning what we're doing, why we're merging science and religion, why it's blasphemy, why it's idiotic, we didn't choose this. It's just the way that our brains work. When you think of science and you think of religion, to you, that's two completely separate things. To me, it's not. To Jordan, it's not. They are very much the same thing. And we don't see any of this content on the internet. So when there's other individuals out there that either are struggling because they don't think like this or think like this and are struggling, then we wanted to be a gateway, a haven for individuals who are in this same mindset. So that is why we're doing this. We're not doing this for any kind of ego. If anything, it's the opposite, right? We're doing everything that we can. We are busting, literally, we are working extremely hard to get this content to you, and we know you appreciate it. But for the individuals who are asking why, think about something in science that is extremely simple, but is extremely abstract. Scientists cannot compute that. They just can't. And a lot of mystics don't have the tools to compute it because they're not thinking about things in a scientific manner. They're thinking about things using the right brain. So when it comes to a very simple concept, yet extremely abstract, even the smartest minds of this century, of the millennia, of whatever, they can't compute it. It takes them 20, 30 years. They have to come back to the subjects. Go check out the Lex Friedman, Stephen Wolfram interview, the round 3, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This guy is brilliant. He's a genius. And the concepts that he's coming up with after 30 years of research are ideas that Jordan and I have been building on for a few years. And it took this, and this is not ego. This is not me saying, look how smart we are. It's just more of a matter of fact, right? There's no ego involved here. It's just, if I don't want anybody who's watching these videos and possibly looking in these comments to get disconcerted or to be concerned with what we're doing, just stay true to it. If you know that it rings true to you, that's all that matters. That's all I really have to say about that. Do you want to say anything about that before I go into quantum field theory?
We're just doing the will
of
the creator.
Exactly. Yeah, this is there's nothing about this. I'd much rather be chilling playing video games. It's not my choice. All right? So, yeah, going into quantum field theory, I know it's one of the big words, it's a buzzword, and I want you to understand what that is. Quantum field theory is essentially, it has its part in quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics came first. Quantum field theory includes special relativity. So essentially, with quantum field theory, it's quantum mechanics, so understanding that particles are wave-like, but it then includes the idea of special relativity. So what I've done my shorts on and what we talked about in the light episode is, you've got time dilation, length contraction. We now have to consider these other variables as opposed to looking at the world classically. And that's how quantum field theory differs from quantum mechanics. And I can go into it as detailed as I need to, but all I really want you to know is that's the difference. And then quantum mechanics says a particle is not a solid thing in space. A particle is vibrations. It's a probability. It has a wave function. So we don't know where it's going to be. That's all the wave function is. The wave function was an idea of where the particle was going to be. If we went to measure it, it could be in point A, point B, point C, depending upon the peaks in the wave, right? So it's just a wave, and imagine where it's high. That's a high chance of it being there. So that is what quantum mechanics gave us. And then quantum field theory went ahead and said, well, the particle itself is an excitation in these things called a field. Now, when you think of a field, I want you to think of an ocean, a vast ocean with a tide moving in. So there's waves, and then there's ripples, and then there's little eddies, and there's all sorts of things happening in that ocean. That's the field. That's one of the fields. And then imagine that there are layers and layers and layers of these fields, and these different fields, when there's an excitation or a movement or a vibration in that field, then now it's a particle. That's literally it. That's what we've found. And that's why with something like the double slit experiment, when you shoot an electron through two slits, so there's two slits, and you shoot the electron through it, it'll interfere with itself because the waves start to the waves from that particle as it moves through those slits. Now you're creating two sets of waves. So just imagine like water. I usually think of water, and that's why I use the ocean. So imagine water going through two open slits, or you could even do it at home if you have something like that. And you'll see that as it moves down through these two slits, it kind of becomes two ripples now. And those two ripples will start to interfere with each other. Or if you live near a pond or some water, throw two rocks into the water and watch how their two concentric circles start to interfere with each other. Now, but you have to think that's one electron. So that's why it's a little hard to conceptualize. And we get that. These are these abstract concepts that are extremely simple that we're talking about. Science has caught up, but just recently. So that's what quantum field theory is, and we can apply that to everything. The principle, we're not talking about it here, but everything vibrates. We've talked about it before. So because everything vibrates, we need to keep that in mind using that principle when we think about any topic. It's no different with quantum field theory. Keep that idea in mind that nothing is solid, everything vibrates, and all it is energy in a field. So that's your 5-minute synopsis of quantum field theory. But I would like you to talk about how now this scientific principle, this scientific property, this field applies to mentalism.
Yeah, so in all of the esoteric ancient systems of initiation, they talk about this all-pervading substance. And for us, hermetically, we're calling it a mind. And it's not as if they weren't calling it a mind, but we're not necessarily using the same verbiage as they would have used. But the all is mind and the universe is mental, and this primordial wave of existence, which in physics we call QFT, quantum field theory. In metaphysics, it's this wave of potential is the mind itself. And this wave has a singularity. It's a singularity, but it has dualistic properties. So there's two ways that you can see it. You can see it as a state of being, which is infinite and formless, and it's abstract and it's nonlinear. Just like in physics, it's in a superposition. So all the potential aspects of the wave, or what all the potential aspects of the particle, what it could be, is inside of the superposition. But we don't know what it is until we square it, and then we don't know what that will be until we actually observe it. And then once we observe it, it becomes a singular thing, which it's spin up or spin down. Correct?
That's one thing that we can measure. Yeah.
Okay. So, but getting into it from a metaphysical standpoint, so, they say like the observer effect. So from an inverse standpoint, or the dualistic aspect of this all mind, you have the becoming, you have the linear, you have the concrete, you have that which is subject to process, which would be the wave particle duality. Once it collapses, now it becomes linear and it becomes, relatively tangible, but it's not actually tangible, which is, in physics, they'll say the particle is just an excitation in the wave. And it has a resting mass, if I'm not mistaken, and that's relative to the amount of energy in the field, which produces a specific type of particle.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that it has to interact with the Higgs field and so forth. So it's basically, if you're studying metaphysics and physics, you can see the correlations, and they're very, very near to each other. If not exact in certain circumstances. But, for example, the ancients called it Maya. They said the all is Maya. So Maya is an illusion, or it's a dreamlike state, like Brahma or Brahman. Brahman is in a sleep-like state. It's dreaming. And then Brahma would be any one of those individual particles that can evolve through this process and gravitate back towards the wave, so to speak. So the whole process of creation is to embody the mind of the creator, or to embody the properties of the wave as the particle. The particle never actually leaves the wave. And in Kabbalah, they call this collapse, so to speak. They call it a kli, which is a vessel or a receptacle for the wave. The wave would be Ain SOPH. And then within Ain SOPH, you have multiple layers, or in this case, multiple waves. And you have Adam Kadmon, that's the first world, and Atzilut, that's the second world, and you have Berea, that's the third world, and you have Yetzirah, that's the fourth world, and then Asiya would be the fifth world. And then each one of these, imagine a layer, which is a wave or a field, and then imagine that there's a series of waves or fields inside of it. And then each one of these macro waves with these microwaves inside of it interpenetrate the other macro waves with their corresponding microwaves, not like a microwave, but the micro as in smaller waves. And then imagine that there is a wave particle duality to each one of these macro and micros. And then imagine that they themselves are also a wave particle duality of Ain SOPH. So every bit of this process is Maya from an absolute standpoint, because the formless remains formless. And when I used to try to teach this, before I knew about quantum field theory, but when I tried to teach it to some of my students when I was incarcerated, I would say, imagine that being is like a wall, and then becoming is you're projecting an image from a projector screen onto the wall. Does the image change the wall? So you have this substantial background of being, which is untouchable and unfathomable, even though you are it, and it is the essence of the projection. Because it's not like it's being projected onto the wall. The wall itself houses and facilitates the expression of this projection, but the projection doesn't actually exist as a tangible thing. It's just a projection on the wall, and the projection, imagine that it always existed. No one's ever just projected it onto the wall. It's always existed on the wall. So being is the primordial essence, which is kind of like quantum field theory. It's the primordial essence of this projection, or of this collapse of this particle, but you can never actually comprehend what it is to be in an absolute state. And then within the absolute is the relative. And the relative is the projection, which is a state of becoming. And this becoming is process. And every bit of that process also has an absolute, which are the principles. They're absolute in an abstract sense within the relative, because they govern it as archetypical means of expressing this projected construct, which is Maya. You see? So the all is mind, the universe is mental. And when they say the universe, they're referring to this entire projection. So in Kabbalah, or the Kabbalistic aspect of all these esoteric systems, because Kabbalah just means to receive, we're receiving from the wave, even though we never leave the wave, because we are the wave and we're just the projection of the wave. So we are the Maya, but we are also the mind that Maya exists in. That's why there's an observer effect, because the observer is being, but it has computational limits. So it's computationally limited in the process of becoming. That's why the universe being mental, it's every perception of an absolute is a relative, because it's processed through an interface, which is a biological means of interpretation, which is subject to process, which is finite, which is the kli, which is the vessel, which is the receptacle. So we're going to get more into this in the Stellar Human series. But for now, like he said, we're just doing small chunks to kind of introduce you to these concepts, in a more scientific manner. And it's not like the two can't be equally equated because they're not actually different. Just like being is not different from becoming. If you have being on a spectrum, then the opposite of that spectrum is not becoming. It's being. So the all mind, the all is in all. And the all is in all. And this is a mind on a spectrum. Now, on this spectrum, being doesn't become becoming because the cause equals the effect, because we're dealing with cause and effect. So if the effect is in the cause and the cause determines the effect, the cause of being must equal being as an effect. Just like what is the opposite of an apple? It's not an orange. It's not a banana. It's not a pineapple. And it's not anything other than an apple seed. Within the apple seed, which is being in this instance, is the tree, which produces the fruit, which is the apple, which houses the apple seed. Once again, so the effect is in the cause. So when we talk about a spectrum, the cause equals the effect. So the question is, well, where is this state of becoming coming from? Being is beginningless and endless. Cause equals effect. Conservation. You can't add to, you can't take away from, you can't create, you can't destroy. Energy. The mind is energy. In QFT, we're talking about energy. It might be something that's not actually tangible for us at this moment in time technologically, but these fields are detectable. These fields are energy. And a particle is energy. Mass is energy. Going back to E equals MC squared. So these equations just are concentrating these metaphysical ideas so that we can conceptualize them.
Yeah.
So back to becoming. Well, if becoming is on a spectrum, becoming equals becoming. Being equals being. So imagine that they're not different, but they're equal in nature, different in degree. By nature, they're the same thing. The degree of it is being is expressed more abundantly through the process of becoming. And the being is always becoming. The becoming is always being. And they're on an infinite spectrum where the being was never not becoming and the becoming was never not being. So you have the all is mind. You have the universe is mental. You have the all, and all paradoxes may be reconciled.